I'd like for us all to chant together this. If you have the book, it's page 7. Otherwise, it's at the beginning of the introduction. So I think it would be nice to, if we together chant this verse at the beginning of each meeting. Okay. Vande Shri Guru Gaurango Radha Govinda Sundaro Saguna Giyate Chata Gita Gudarta Gauravam. Bowing down to the holy feet of Shri Guru, Shri Gauranga, and Shri Shri Radha Govinda Sundar, all accompanied by their associates, I sing the glories of the hidden treasure of Srimad-Bhagavad Gita. Okay, and now I'm going to fast forward to where we left off last week. We were in the middle of the introduction. Okay, and I'll go through this last paragraph we read last time because we ended with because it's so nice. So continuing our reading of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, introduction by Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Deva Goswami. From the standpoint of Sambandha Gyan or knowledge of relationship, Sri Gita gives us the conception that the absolute reality is a transcendental personality. From the standpoint of Prayojan or the objective, spiritual love for the absolute reality is given as the highest attainment. And from the standpoint of Abhideya or the means, we are taught that one must initially offer all his actions to the Supreme Lord, followed by the cultivation of self-realization, favorable to realization of the Lord, and finally surrender to the Lord to the exclusion of all other endeavors. Ultimately, the means will culminate in the objective when, in one's perfected spiritual form, one wholeheartedly engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Sri Gita has clearly shown the distinctions between the various paths, such as the path of action or karma yoga, including worship of the gods for worldly fulfillment, and the path of knowledge for the attainment of liberation. The thoughtful reader can note that Sri Gita, by its comparative study, refutes the misconception that the many paths and goals are all one. Rather, it is stated, Yo yat shraddha sa eva sa. A man is known by his faith. These verses would warrant deep consideration in this respect. The yogi is superior to persons engaged in austerity, superior to the person of knowledge, and superior to the person of action. Therefore, O Arjuna, be a yogi. And best of all yogis is my faithful devotee, for whom I am the only goal, and who serves me wholeheartedly. This is my opinion. And this is a quote from chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita. Showing the inferiority and meaninglessness of dry renunciation, the gift of Sri Gita is most substantial and positive. Rather than merely renouncing action, one should selflessly offer one's actions to the Supreme Lord, Karma Yoga. Ultimately, based on one's surrender, one will be inspired to act in devotion, bhakti, for the Lord alone. This is the conclusive and sublime teaching of Sri Gita. In the finest conception, the overall excellence of Sri Gita is found in its gift of devotion. In its full manifestation, such devotion is prema bhakti, loving devotion to the all-attractive Supreme Personality, Sri Krishna, reality, the beautiful. Secret, more secret, and the most secret of all teachings have been given, as the congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord, Sankirtan, and service in spontaneity, Bhava Seva, with exclusive surrender and dedication to the transcendental pleasure of Krishna as the ultimate goal of life, as sung by the vibrant clarion call of Sri Gita. Sarva dharmam prityaja mamekam sharanam braja, and is deeply contemplated by the followers of the lotus footsteps of the Supreme Lord, who mercifully appears as the savior in this age of Kali, Sri Chaitanya Chandra, and as corroborated by the divine succession of saintly teachers. May Lord Shri Krishna accept the offering of this edition. Swami B.R. Sridhar, Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Navadvip Janmashtami, Bengali year 1368. So it's such a wonderful introduction. It's short, it's concise, but packed. There's so much that is contained within here, and these points we've just been through, very significant, very important. That Srila Sridhar Maharaj is establishing from the beginning. Establishing from the beginning that this conception that everything is one, all paths are one, which is a very popular notion nowadays. This is being, Srila Sridhar Maharaj is making it clear, this is being rejected. There are various paths, but there is also gradation. It is not they're all on an equal platform and have the same destination. There's a gradation. And then this point of Srila Sridhar Maharaj that, ultimately the real gift of Gita is the gift of bhakti, the gift of devotion. And, and that's something, there are many interpretations of Gita. They are just that, they are interpretations, and they are imposing upon what is the real original message of Bhagavad Gita. And so here, as is included in the title, hidden treasure, right? This is Srila Sridhar Maharaj, our gurus, they're drawing out what is the real treasure, what is the hidden treasure of Srimad-Bhagavad Gita. And that is prema bhakti, that is loving devotion for the Supreme Lord. And this is not, Srila Sridhar Maharaj is adding here in the commentary, secret, most secret of all teachings. And, there's one chapter, Raja Guhya Yoga, it's chapter 9, I think. And it mentioned, it's called the hidden treasure devotion, Raja Guhya Yoga. And he mentions, Sri Krishna in the first verse, he mentions, it's very significant. I'll just read this, jumping ahead to chapter 9. Idam tu te guyatamam pravaksham yanasuyave jnanam vijnana sahitam yajgatva mokshase shubhat. That, I'll read this. The Supreme Lord says, I now reveal to you who are without envy this most hidden treasure of knowledge of pure devotion, with direct realization of me, knowing which you will be liberated from inauspiciousness, from all that is opposed to devotion. So there's an interest in 2 points are very interesting here. One, that Krishna is saying, now I'm going to reveal to you what is the true message that I'm giving here. That is bhakti, this hidden treasure of bhakti. And then another significant point here, this word anusuyave, it means who is without envy. So why is this a hidden thing? Why is this hidden? Because you cannot appreciate it unless you are free from envy. And this is also echoed at the very beginning of the scripture, Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is our most important go-to text, which is supporting the conclusions of pure devotion to Sri Krishna. And there in the very second verse of Srimad-Bhagavatam, Veda Vyas, the compiler of all the Vedas, he's announcing, you won't find in this book what was in all the other books that I presented to you. But here in this book, I'm only speaking about the highest truth, and who will be able to appreciate this? Paramo nirmat saranam satam, who is nirmatsar, who is free from envy. Only they will be able to appreciate this hidden treasure. Because otherwise, if you want to concoct your own version of reality in which you are in the center, Krishna will let you do that. And in the Vedas, he's providing lots of fuel to help you believe that you're the center, because you're not ready to accept the finer truth. But for those who are free from envy, who are ready, who don't need to be God themselves, but are ready to enter into a culture of appreciation, appreciating Krishna at the center and appreciating the saints, the Vaishnavas, as higher, as superior, then, those persons who don't have this filter of self-interest, over their vision, who can clearly perceive what is what, then they can understand, they can appreciate the value of bhakti. So we are blessed. We have this edition of Bhagavad Gita, which is revealing that true inner wealth of Bhagavad Gita. So we've concluded that the introduction here, and we have here a picture of our Gurudev, Srila Bhakti Sandar Govinda Deva Goswami Maharaj, Padam Gurudev, Srila Bhakti Raksha, Sridhar Deva Goswami Maharaj. And we have this beautiful painting depicting Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and I don't know if we're going to be able to go too far in the actual text because there is a bit of context surrounding Bhagavad Gita, which I think it will be, it has some it is a somewhat helpful and increases our appreciation to have some understanding of the context. But one thing I wanted to mention, which I think also is important to mention at the beginning, because it will kind of set the tone of our, of this whole course that we're entering into. I'm reminded here of, and this we were mentioning very recently, but I can't remember where and with who, that, there's one, I'm looking at this picture of painting of Krishna Arjuna on the battlefield. There's one incident described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Lord Chaitanya Dev, he's traveling in South India, and he comes across a temple where there's this simple man who's practically illiterate, but every day he very devotedly sits in this temple reading Bhagavad Gita, Srimad-Bhagavata Gita. Every day he faithfully sits reading this, and as he's reading, tears are streaming down his face. And even though he's not able to read properly, and many of the local people, they criticize him, they insult him. But Lord Chaitanya Dev, during his travels, he comes across him and he inquires from him, what is it that you're thinking of? What are you seeing when you're crying? And also, I can see that you can hardly read, so why is it that you're doing this, so faithfully? And that man, he responds, my Gurudev, he instructed me to read Bhagavad Gita every day. And actually, I can't read very well, and I don't understand the meanings very well, but my Gurudev instructed me to do this, so I'm doing this. It's a matter of faith. And then he said, and I'm crying because I'm just thinking about how, Krishna and his dear friend, they're on this chariot together, and Krishna, the Supreme Lord, he has accepted this humble position as a chariot driver. Like translate that to a modern context, an Uber driver. Krishna has accepted a position as a taxi driver, as a chauffeur. The supreme original divinity, has taken this humble position as a chauffeur to his beloved friend, out of affection. So this is the sweetness in Bhagavad Gita that this devotee is appreciating. How much love and affection the Lord has for his devotees. So I feel it's nice to remember that as we're beginning this, as we're embarking on this new journey, because we want to remember that ultimately it's not about how much we're intellectually, imbibing, and how perfectly we can memorize the verses here, or understand the philosophical significance, so on and so forth. But, we're actually connecting with the divine flow. We're connecting with the divine current. And we want to invite that into our hearts. We want that to have a living presence within our hearts and within our lives. So, and that's something that is beyond the box of our brain cells. So we are praying as we begin Sri Gita. We are praying for the mercy of Sri Gita. And may that mercy wash over us and manifest within our lives in whatsoever way she so wishes. That is our prayer, and that is the mood with which we want to begin. May this not be a mental exercise, an intellectual exercise, but let this be an exercise of faith and devotion, with bhakti, shraddha. And may this be ultimately an offering of service, for the pleasure, for the satisfaction of the higher plane. This is so crucial in any devotional practice, that when we begin the practice, we have to remember it's like beginning, middle, and end. It's an offering. It's not for me to acquire something, but this is an offering. What I'm hearing, I'm offering. May what I hear be used in the service of my Lord, of the saints. So we want to begin with this kind of mood. We have also a beautiful picture here of the domes, Sri Navadip Dham, Sri Chaitanya Saraswati domes. And now we've come to chapter 1, Sainya Darshan, observing the armies. And we did have a preview last week. We did chant the first verse together, but we can go through that again. So a little bit of context. I forgot, got ahead of myself. I think most of our friends here, they know very well the context, but it's always helpful to review. This was like this was a dispute between two groups of cousins, the Kauravas and the Pandavas. And I don't know if we need to go into all the details. It's very intricate. I think most of you have some familiarity with Mahabharata, and it's really the great epic of ancient India. And just on a level, of course, it's not just a story, but just on a story level, I don't know if anything compares to to what. And most persons, they read a condensed version of Mahabharata, but the original text, I started going through it at once. It is vast, it really feels like you're wading in an ocean, and there's so many stories and sub-stories and sub-stories, you start to get lost. So it's very elaborate. And sometimes our devotees, they'll even, like if there's some type of saga taking place in one of our communities, they'll compare it, they'll describe it as a Mahabharata type scenario. So anyway, I don't know if we need to go into all the details of the background, but basically it's the Pandavas, they are our righteous heroes, and the kingdom is rightfully theirs, but they have these envious cousins, and they're the cousins, the Kauravas, they are also guided or misguided by their father Dhritarashtra. So Duryodhana, he's it's 100 sons, right? On the Kauravas side, 100 or maybe 101 or something like that. And Duryodhana is the head of that group. Duryodhana is just plain wicked. And then his father Dhritarashtra, who's the uncle of the Pandavas, he's more of a conflicted character. He's got, he has a leaning towards goodness. He has a conscience within him. He has the voice of a conscience within him. But then he also has he's also weak. He's morally weak. And so his greed and his desire for his own sons, his own direct sons, to be in superior position, it often gets the better of him, but he's very conflicted. And it's one of those situations which is very complicated, and there could be a case made for either side, because Dhritarashtra, he was actually he was the eldest son, but he was blind, so normally the throne would go to the eldest son, but because he was blind, he's somewhat incapacitated. So then it was the next in line was Pandu, his younger brother. But then Pandu died very young. And so then the lineage should have continued with Pandu's sons, right? Because he died young, but the sons were minors at the time. So Dhritarashtra, in their stead, he, ruled. But the idea being, once they come of age, then they should have the throne. Yudhisthira is the eldest son. But then, Dhritarashtra is also thinking, well, actually, I am the eldest son. Like, I should have really been the king. And so I would really like to hold on to the throne, and I'd like to give it on to my son, Duryodhana. So it's a tricky, it's a complicated context. And so ultimately this comes to Duryodhana having his cousins, the Pandavas, exiled for, was it 14 years, 12 years? And so many twists and turns, but ultimately it comes to war. It comes to the Pandavas, they're very righteous. They want to avoid conflict, but it becomes so bad that they have no other recourse. And Duryodhana is also not fit to be a king. It's not that only that they want to be rulers themselves, but they're thinking for the welfare of the kingdom, and the kingdom is suffering under Duryodhana. So this is something of the background, but it is a background. I know some people, they kind of trip on the fact that this takes place in the middle of a battle, and especially in the current age, people are becoming more and more conscious and more pacifist in their mentality. There's less and less of the nationalistic spirit, that even just 50 years ago was very pervasive throughout society. So sometimes people, they're very uncomfortable with the background of Bhagavad Gita, that it's on a battlefield, takes place on a battlefield. But it's important to remember that it is a background. And it's really, we can understand it as an excuse for Bhagavad Gita to come out. It's ultimately not of any significance. What's being discussed in Bhagavad Gita, what's spoken by Krishna, these are eternal, absolute truths that are, they're relevant at all times, all places, all circumstances. The teachings transcend any type of local social context. So, we want to understand a little bit of the context, but let's not get stuck on that. Let's not trip on that. Okay, well, let's go on to the first verse, and let's chant this verse together. This first verse again. I know we did last week. And if you like, you can put your mics, turn your mics on as you like. Dhritarashtra uvacha dharmakshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsava mamaka pandavaschaiva kema korvata sanjaya. Dhritarashtra said, "O Sanjaya, what happens when my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled for battle at the holy place of Kurukshetra?" So, a few points here. So again, a little context. So Dhritarashtra, he's back in the palace. His chariot driver had received a special benediction to be able to perceive whatever he wanted at any time, Sanjaya. And so Sanjaya had this ability with his inner eye. He could see, he could hear what was taking place on the battlefield. So this is kind of like in real time, Dhritarashtra's hearing what's happening. So the two armies are assembling at this place of Kurukshetra. And Kurukshetra, it's known to be a holy place. And we also hear, of course, many of you are familiar, Kurukshetra is mentioned as the place where Krishna and the residents of Vrindavan met after something like 100 years of separation. It was at Kurukshetra because there was an eclipse looming. And it's traditional in the Vedic culture, if an eclipse is considered inauspicious. And so it's traditional to take shelter of a holy place at that time, especially holy rivers, and take shelter of the name. So it was at this place of Kurukshetra, and this probably was after, some years after the battle, but it could have been before, I'm not sure. But anyway, the point is, it's known as it's a well-known holy place, Kurukshetra. And so in this first verse, it's mentioned Dharma. Kshetra means place. So Dharma is religion, right? Righteousness. So it's mentioned Kurukshetra. It is a place of Dharma. It is. In other words, it is a holy place. And a few interesting points here. One thing which is mentioned in the commentaries is that Dhritarashtra, he feels a little concerned, that, because, as I mentioned, Dhritarashtra, he's a conflicted character. He has his higher side and his lower side. And so in his heart, he knows that the Pandavas are the rightful heirs to the throne, and they are righteous people. He knows that, they're dharmic. He knows the Pandavas are dharmic. And he knows his own son is somewhat wicked. So it's mentioned in the commentaries of our teachers, acharyas, that Dhritarashtra is feeling a little concerned that because this is a dharma kshetra, this is a holy place, then the influence of that holy place, may cause things to move more in favor of the Pandavas. That the Pandavas may get the upper hand because they're righteous people and they're in a holy place, and there's more support on their side. Or also that as a result of this holy place, this atmosphere, this holy atmosphere, this may inspire some peace negotiations, or there may be some compromise or something like that. So he's concerned that, essentially that the influence of this holy place, it may may prevail over this meeting, and it may cause his own sons to lose out, simply put, that they'll be left in with less than what he would want. He wants them to have everything. So anything less than that, he's not satisfied with. So that's one point, and then another point here, which is interesting, is that Dhritarashtra is making this clear distinction between, my sons, I, me, and mine, and the sons of Pandu. So actually, they're all one family. These are his nephews. They're all one family. And we don't even need to go to that. But these are fellow humankind, right? We are one in a sense. So why is it we are all, or we can say also, we are all servants of God. There's one beautiful quote of Srila Sridhar Maharaj where he says, "What is the need of so much formality and fashion when we are all humble servants of the Lord?" I love that so much. What is the need, for so much pomp and all these things, and distinction? We are all humble servants. So, but Dhritarashtra is not in that consciousness. He's in this divided consciousness, this binary consciousness, us and them. And so this is really the root. This is the root of all the problems here. You know, this self-centered, egoistic consciousness. And this is the influence of the material energy. There's a famous verse of Prahlad Maharaj in Srimad-Bhagavatam, where he mentions this, how he, this is in relation to his father, right? Who's a great demon, Hiranyakashipu, and he's living in this very material consciousness of wanting to assert his own proprietorship over everything, and living in fear of anyone who threatens that, and perceiving anyone as an enemy who's threatening his supremacy, so-called supremacy. And so there's a prayer of Prahlad where he's saying, let me offer my respects, to the Supreme Lord, by whose, power, astonishing material energy, the souls of this world conceive of such notions as friends and enemies. This is, in other words, it's under the influence of the material energy of Maya that we have such a conception, friend, enemy. This is a part of the disease of material existence, that we see things in this divided way. We have our own set of interests, and whoever's, our own selfish set of interests, our own selfish version of reality, and whoever's supporting that, like whoever's reinforcing that, they're our friend. And whoever is threatening that, opposing that, they're our enemy. This is a very materialistic way of thinking. So Dhritarashtra is in this consciousness, and this is the root of these problems. This is the cause of the war and all wars, right? Okay, we'll move on to verse number 2. So Dhritarashtra is making this query, and then Sanjaya is responding. Sanjaya Vacha Drishtatu Pandavanikam Yudam Duryodhanastada Acharjam Upasangamya Rajavachanam Abravit. Sanjaya said, seeing the Pandava's soldiers and armies arrayed for battle, King Duryodhana approached Dronacharya and said, so Duryodhana, right? He's the eldest son of Dhritarashtra. He's in the enemy camp, and he's approaching Dronacharya, who's been appointed the general of his camp. And another point to mention here, as we're kind of setting the scene, is that this was a very complicated situation, social situation, because there were many persons who they supported Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana out of obligation. That actually their hearts were with the Pandavas. I mean, anybody with half a brain could see that the Pandavas are the real heroes, and the Pandavas, they're the righteous souls. But because of the social obligations, family obligations, there were many persons who they felt compelled to support and to act on this, to fight on the side of Duryodhana. But actually their heart was with the Pandavas. So this is another interesting point about the context of all this. So Dronacharya is one of those persons. I mean, like these are cousins, right? The Kauravas and the Pandavas, they grew up, they were raised together. They studied under the same teachers, same weapons masters and everything else. And so Dronacharya, he was the weapons master, and he trained them all. And actually, as I recall, Arjuna was his favorite, right? Arjuna was his favorite. Arjuna, who's on the side of the Pandavas. So, there are many of the persons here, they're very conflicted. And Dronacharya is one of them. So we'll go on to verse number 3. And again, we can chant this together. Pashaitam Pandubhutranam Acharya Mahatim Chamum Yudam Drupadaputrena Tava Shishena Dimata. O my teacher, please observe the great armies of the Pandavas, arranged in military formation by your brilliant disciple, Drishtadyumna. So this is a heavily sarcastic statement, because there's a whole history here. I don't know if I can remember all the details, but basically, Drishtadyumna, he is the son of King Drupada, and Drupada and Jonah, well, maybe, I mean, this is going to be too complicated to go into all the details, but okay, I'll stick to the essential points here. The essential point here is that Drishtadyumna, he was, okay, no way, I will tell a little bit more, otherwise it won't be clear. So Drupada, there's a whole history. The father of Drishtadyumna was Drupada. He's also the father of Draupadi, who was the wife of the Pandavas. So this Drishtadyumna and Draupadi, they're brother and sister. And so, but the father, Drupada, he previously had been a close friend of Dronacharya, who's the general on the Kaurava side, but they had some dispute. I don't remember the details. And as a result of that, they turned from friends to enemies. And then Drupada, the father, he performed this special fire sacrifice in order to produce a son who would kill Dronacharya. And so Drishtadyumna was born as a result of that. So Drishtadyumna was born to kill Dronacharya, right? This was like a known thing. However, Drishtadyumna went to Dronacharya for training. The plot thickens here. I'm watching Marie's expressions here. I'm loving it. It's very confounding stuff. So Drishtadyumna went to Dronacharya. Drishtadyumna, who was born to kill Dronacharya, went to Dronacharya for training. And Dronacharya trained him. And, essentially to kill him. And so Duryodhana's being quite sarcastic here, saying like, look how expertly the armies of the Pandavas has been arranged, by your disciple, your brilliant disciple who you trained, Drishtadyumna, like, thanks a lot, Whose side are you on here? Okay.
Wouldn't you say that shows like the sadhu nature of Dronacharya, that like he's such a sadhu that he's like indifferent to like enemy friend and like it's all good?
Yeah. So Chintamani's here. I don't know if you could hear, but yeah, I don't remember the exact details. Maybe someone else, maybe Jayadev. I see also Jaya Bhakti Maharani has joined us. Maybe someone here can remember the exact details, but I believe that is definitely the sadhu nature. Even if someone is, going to do harm to you. And we see Lord Ramachandra, he displays the same mentality. Even if someone may harm him, he must do his duty to support them, even if he knows they may harm him in the future. That is the dharmic mentality. Like, I do my duty. That's it. Regardless of what happens after that, even if it comes back to me against me, that's irrelevant, actually. And this is also an important principle of karma yoga. We'll come to that in chapter 3. There's this famous verse: karma nyeva nikadaste ma phaleshu kadachana. Your right is to your duty. not to the fall, not to the fruit, the results of your action, your duty. So I believe so. I don't remember all the details of the story, but I believe Dronacharya did know from the beginning the whole situation surrounding Drishtadyumna, but trained him anyway. I believe so.
I think he did.
You think, okay, Chintan was saying, yeah, that he did.
I was wondering maybe you could help for people who this is foreign to, explaining also the Kshatriya class and how, like, because that's also a symptom of more than just the sadhu, the Kshatriya code, like, and the whole culture, like why, like, you know, because you've touched on it a lot with the fact that, like, you know, many of the people supporting Dronacharya are supporting him out of duty. Maybe you could elucidate something about the Kshatriya, because these are all Kshatriyas we're talking about, everyone there, pretty much.
Right. You please say something first.
Oh no, I'm driving, but I was just thinking that for some people that might be something you could. You're so good at explaining it.
I mean, I'm not sure exactly what you're thinking of. I mean, I don't know if I'm familiar enough with the Kshatriya nature.
Well, all right, I'll give one small thing. So the Kshatriyas are the warrior class, like how we have the president in the military.
Oh, you're cutting out now.
Yeah,
Look
he's
at-
doing that mountain drive to Santa Barbara.
Oh, he's on
high, so it's not a.
He's on a mountain. He's on a mountain
It's not
drive.
an ideal connection.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Unfortunately, we can't hear you. I mean, all I can say in that regard, you know, is that the Kshatriyas, they are meant to be, you know, very righteous souls. You know, always acting. You know, they're warriors, but you know, for a higher cause. We have a comment here from Jai Bhakti is saying here that she also understood it, like she heard it like that Dronacharya was fully aware. Oh, let's see. That's how I learned it also. He knew that his disciple would kill him with the very skills he would teach, but that it was all arranged by the Lord, so he could only do so and follow his duty. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Jai Bhakti. Wonderful. And as for, unfortunately, we've lost Jayadev. I think he's lost his connection. But, you know, there is a very strong code. Oh, are you back, Jayadev? Are you back?
Yeah, I mean, I'm here. Yeah,
Okay.
I guess just that idea that in Vedic times, the military, or in Vedic culture, the military, they aren't yogis externally, but that same code applies to all the different orders of life. And all of these characters we're dealing with here are in the Kshatriya or military class, right?
Yeah.
But they're all, so anyways, just speaking to that, I can't give more, but just maybe just speaking to that, like they're acting like yogis, but they're actually in the military class,
Right,
and that the whole culture is actually based around the same principles in healthy Vedic culture, et cetera, et cetera.
Very nice. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Jayadev. Anyone else want to add any thoughts? Oh, we're actually coming close to the end now. Anyone else want to add any thoughts at this point? Comments or questions? I think. Wonderful to be here with all of you. And welcome also to Maheshri, joined us from Hungary. Okay, well, maybe we can hear a few more verses. So verses 4 to 6. Atra Shoda Maheshvasa Bhimarjuna Samayudi Yuyudano Viratascha Drupadascha Mahadataha Drishtaketuscha Kirtanaha Kashirajascha Viryavan Purujet Kunti Bojascha Shaibhyascha Narapungavaha Yudamanyuscha Vikranta Uttamojascha Viryavan Sobhadro Dropadeyascha Sarvaeva Maharataha. Among these soldiers, so this is Duryodhana surveying the other side. Among these soldiers, amongst the Pandavas' army, Among these soldiers are the expert archers, Bhima, Arjuna, and others equally skilled in battle, like Satyaki, King Virata, the great fighter Drupada, Jushtaketu, Chekitana, the mighty hero Kashiraj, Purujit, Kunti Boja, the noble King Shaibya, the valiant Yudamanyu, the heroic Uttamoja, Abhimanyu, and the sons of Draupadi. They are all great warriors indeed. Verse 7. Asmakam tu vishishta ye taniboda drijotama nayaka mama sainyasya samgyatam tan bravimite. I'll read a few verses. Bhavan bhishmascha karnascha kripascha samitinjaya Ashwatthama vikarnascha somadatir jayadratah anye cha bahava shura madarte chakta jivita nanashascha prahadana sarve yuddha vishadadaha aparyaptam tarasmakam balam bhishma virakshitam paryaptam tidamitesham balam bhima virakshitam Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yatabagam avashtitaha Bhishma meva birakshantu bhavanta sarva eva hi. O best of the twice-born, please consider too the foremost amongst us, the commanders of my armies. I submit their names before you. Firstly, there is your respected self, then Bhishma, Karna, the ever-victorious Kripacharya, Ashwatthama, Vikarna, Bodhisattva, Jayadratha, and many other heroes skilled in the art of warfare, all armed with various weapons and prepared to lay down their very lives for me. The strength of our army, headed by Bhishma, seems inestimable, yet the strength of the Pandavas' army, protected by Bhima, is estimable. Now take up your posts at the strategic points of the formation in support of Bhishma. Okay, so I want to close with this. This is a really interesting point. This last verse we just read. This is verse 11 of the first chapter. Our Gurudev, he had some profound insight into this verse, and it's a beautiful example of how the great Mahatmas, the great souls, the Paramahamsas, they, out of such a small point, so much can be drawn out, so much can be taken. This is like especially this first chapter, it's kind of just setting the context, and it's kind of a chapter that, we'll generally just breeze through, right? And then the teachings really begin in the second chapter. But our Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, he gave this whole talk once on this verse. And the verse is just saying, Duryodhana telling his crew, take up your posts, in support of Bhishma. Take up your posts at the strategic points of the formation in support of Bhishma. It's, what's special about this? But our Gurudev, he made this really wonderful point here, how, going back to our discussion of the context and the complex intricacies of the relationships. So Bhishma, Bhishma is like Dronacharya. Bhishma, he was the great, the mighty, grandfather, the mighty hero of the, of this whole clan. And he's a very righteous person, But again, like Dronacharya, due to what he feels to be his obligation, his personal obligation to the side of the Kauravas and to Dhritarashtra, he ends up on the other side. His heart is with the Pandavas, is what I'm saying. His heart is with the Pandavas. He knows that's the righteous side, but he feels obligated to fight on the side of the Kauravas. And so the point our Gurudev made is that Duryodhan knew this very well. Duryodhan was very aware that Bhishma would really rather be on the other side, and that his heart was not really into this. However, he also had full faith in the nobility of Bhishma, that he knew if Bhishma said he was going to fight for him, he would fight for him. He knew he wasn't going to undermine him in any way. He trusted in that, and this also, goes back to what Jayadev was saying, like the nobility of a true Kshatriya. It's a serious code, code of honor. So even though Bhishma is really with the Pandavas at heart, he said he'll fight for Duryodhan, so he's going to fight for Duryodhan. And Duryodhan, even though Duryodhan is uncomfortable about the situation, Duryodhan's going along with that. He's trusting that Bhishma is going to act in his favor. And so he's announcing to his army, everybody support Bhishma. Bhishma's our general, everyone support him. He's being pragmatic, he's being practical about the situation, even though it's a little awkward. So our Gurudev, he made the point he drew out from here was that similarly, in our communities, we may not always like the devotees that we're trying to cooperate with, we're trying to serve with, we're trying to do things, we're trying to do projects with, we're trying to develop, the centers with. We may have personal differences, we may have different cultures, different backgrounds, different, just different everything, and we may not even like each other very much, but he said, but we will be one for the service of our Guru Maharaj. He wasn't speaking about himself, but he was speaking about his Guru, Srila Sridhar Maharaj. So he's conceiving these missions, they all exist for the service of Guru Maharaj. And we have our differences, but for this, we will be one. Let us set our differences aside here and come together, and be unified, in this realm, And, I was actually thinking about this the other day because our hostess here, Kelly, her husband, his brother, he's like a coach or something for these national rowing championships that were held in this last weekend in San Diego. There was some big event, some big competition, and so Kelly's husband Chris, he went down to San Diego for that, and then he came back, and after the weekend he was sharing something about it, and it was what I found really interesting is he described how they have these 8-man boats, and these are athletes who all come from very different backgrounds, and often have very different political views, different personalities, but they have to work together. I mean, just imagine that. It was just blowing my mind. An 8-man row, that's not a joke. That's no small feat, an 8-man rowing boat. That's a lot of teamwork. It actually inspired me quite deeply. Like, what level of teamwork and cooperation is required for that? So I was reminded of this discussion that our Gurudev had. So it's something to, as Gangalila might say, something to put in our teacup. Something to percolate, that, for the sake of a higher harmony, for the sake of a greater cause and a higher purpose, sometimes we have to make some compromise, and we have to set aside our differences and try to find, where and how we can be unified for everyone's sake, and for, more successfully realizing our spiritual goals, and our service goals. And and all the offerings that we are trying to make to the Lord, to the devotees, the saints, the Vaishnavas. So, okay, I'm gonna close our reading here. So we've ended on verse 11, chapter 1. We'll pick up next week. Does anyone want to share any thoughts here before we end for today? Oh, and now we have someone just joining. Maybe we need, I don't know if it got changed yet. There, that automatic email thing, because it was 11, remember? So maybe.
Yeah, I'm gonna change that. Thank
Okay,
you.
okay.
I gotta do that.
Now we have someone joining now.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Angel. We've changed the time to 10 now.
It's okay. Thank you for letting me know.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. It was, maybe you're not in the WhatsApp group. It was but I know there's also an automatic email that's still going out with the old time, so it's a little confusing.
I don't have the email. I am in the WhatsApp, and honestly, I thought it might have been a typo. So
Okay, that was
I popped in to see.
okay.
Better safe than sorry. I get to see your lovely face, so this is good.
Oh, well, we get to hear your lovely voice.
Mm.
Okay, well, sorry about that. Jaya Bhakti, Didi, please, you're raising your hand.
Thank you so much, Maharani Vichaka. Dandavat to all the devotees. I'm so grateful for these lectures. It's my favorite Bhagavad Gita, so I'm so happy. Thank you so much. Apart from thanking you, I wanted to agree on your comments about the introduction and just leading into the lecture, that there is so much about it that we really better get into the verses. But I just wanted to add about the fact that it's in a battlefield to all the wonderful remarks that you made, because that's a very common question that devotees get. And I just like to always stress that in the very explanations that we get from Sridhar Maharaj, it is said that it's very important actually that it was in that place, because by being a battle and being in Kurukshetra, then all these people who were actually demoniac would be saved. They would be delivered immediately. So such is the mercy of the Lord, that it looks at all the little details, because the reciting, the singing of the Bhagavad Gita, the chanting of the Bhagavad Gita by the Lord to Arjuna, not only teaches us all these amazing shlokas that give us our manual for life, but every little detail is full of meaning and teachings, and is ultimately teaching us about the mercy of Krishna, who is the most merciful, the origin of mercy. So this is to me very beautiful. When I understood that the fact that it was in Kurukshetra and that the battle would be happening there, and that all the bad ones, to say so, were going to be killed, so Arjuna had to go into battle about the same, because they were already in that destiny. I loved that feeling that, yeah, they were going to die, but for their own good, because that way, by leaving the body in Kurukshetra sacred field, then they would be going back to Godhead. So that's to me a very loving remark. And since it's a question that we get all the time, what about the battle? What about the place, etc.? I just wanted to add that to me, Bhagavad Gita is all about the love and mercy of the Lord. Thank you so much again for this lecture. It's such a wonderful Bhagavad Gita. Thank you so much. My love to everyone. Dandavat.
Dandavad. Thank you so much, Didi. Thank you. Anyone else want to add any comments? What about our hostesses, Chintamani Devi and Gangalila here? The Chintamani's here.
Dandavat, y'all. Thanks for coming. Hare Krishna. Thanks, Didi, for being here with us in person. Y'all missed out on the bliss. It was an amazing week. And then next stop, Tijuana for Vishaka Didi, then to Gangalila's in Orange County. So stay tuned. You'll see a flyer going out for all the Orange County friends out there. And Hare Krishna. Jai Bhagavad Gita. Invite your friends. Share the link. Not on Facebook though, because then the creepers come in, but privately share the link.
Jai Chintamani Devi. Gangalila, any do you want to pray us out with some inspiration?
I don't know how I ended up doing that. I feel always like I want to make myself really small and give somebody else that.
No, that's your seva.
Yeah, maybe Jayadev, but yeah, happy birthday, Jayadev. So that was something what happened, and so happy birthday. And I am actually just praying that I can have, with all the love and the clarity and the lightness, to have this veil of ignorance lifted, because I still find it mentally difficult, like, because I think like this kind of this extreme, the extent of loyalty, the extent of duty, I don't think I've had it role modeled in my life enough to really have a glimpse of what does that really look like. So it's weird again, but honestly, I still feel like I don't understand it. So I'm praying for, you know, the lightness to come in to lift my veil of ignorance, because I still feel it's hard for me.
You know, I'm so glad that you raised that point, Gangalila. You always raise really pertinent points. Yeah, because we're having all this talk about like righteousness and dharma and duty, but to a Western, you know, your average Western, you know, raised, educated audience, like you can't relate to that, right? It doesn't really mean very much, you know. Whereas in the Vedic culture, like this was a matter of life and death, you know, like to uphold the dharma, to uphold your duty, to maintain your honor and the honor of your family and so on. Like this is a matter of life and death, you know. It's you know, it's like in their blood. It's like ingrained in their blood. You know, it's a very deeply rooted feeling, you know, for those who are raised, you know, in that Vedic culture. Of course, that's changing nowadays, you know, this modern age, but you know, this was the traditional Vedic structure and mood. You know, like you'll rather die than not maintain your duty.
So yeah, and we come from like, oh, that wasn't nice. Now I'm divorced and I leave this right now. I'm gonna quit my job. And everything is completely the opposite here, you know. It's like, yeah, I really used to love that. She used to be my best friend, but hell, I don't really want to ever have anything to do with her. So is this actually supposed to return me to my internal righteousness? Is this supposed to inspire me to find that kind of loyalty for the higher, to get me into that next level of being a better devotee? Is that what this is really about? Is this the real battlefield, that I need to come out of all that culture of nothing really matters that much, does it? So it returns me to yes, it matters so much. It's about life and death. Is that what we are doing here? Is that what's going to do that for me?
Well, Gangalila, you're bringing up some deep points here, and I see Jayadev is raising his hand. You're getting the fire, stoking the fire here. I love this. Jayadev,
I'm actually
tell us.
parked. Can you hear me okay, though? I don't know what the reception's like.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, and no, it's perfect, Gangalila, you're asked, because there was something that was like coming up while I'm driving, and I'm not thinking I can put it into words, but I thought maybe, you know, so what we're getting is a view into Kshatriya culture, and the underlying fundamental view is that we are not this body. They're living in that consciousness. So Kshatriyas don't take physical death very seriously. They take the death of honor extremely serious. If you aren't identified with the body, then all of a sudden honor becomes more important than your physical body's well-being. So this is Kshatriya like mentality. This is the warrior class. That's why they're qualified to protect people generally. And I wanted to add, because Maharani Jai Bhakti also added, fleshed out. I know there's something that's not about any one of us that's wanting to come out of this, and I'll try to add like dimensions to it from my little corner. Even like she was saying, so for a Kshatriya to die in battle upholding dharma, you automatically get liberation, and you actually automatically, you'll hear this later, Krishna will say this to Arjuna, for a Kshatriya to die in battle, automatically you get you get the benefit of yogic practice, because for a Kshatriya to defend the Brahmanas and the other classes is your yoga. That is your dharma, and this will all be addressed by Shri Krishna, as we go further. And so, if you're a Kshatriya, yes, this is your code, but maybe not if that's not your, thing. And also, we don't have any real Kshatriyas in Kali Yuga. So this battle is at the cusp of the entrance of Kali Yuga, and so this was like the last stand. This is actually partially what brought in Kali Yuga, and actually Duryodhana, this demonic person, he's actually seen as an incarnation of Kali himself. And this is like deep, like, so he's actually bringing in the age of natural degradation from these deeply like, how do you say it? Like divine eternal principles pervading a society. And we're right in the middle of Kali Yuga. So we can't be too hard on ourselves because we don't have the etheric support to embody this fully. So the best thing we can do is like take shelter of Shri Krishna and the holy name and the devotees and just progress. That's like that. We're so lucky. And I know you'll like this, Gangalila, like you'll be relieved. Like you've said this before. Oh God, what a relief, right? Like we aren't expected to hold up those levels of that code because the whole atmosphere is not at that level of vibration where we can be safe to even do that. And again, like we're given a special dispensation of mercy, which I'm sure, Sri Yukta Vishaka, you could get, explain that better than I. But I hope some of that's fleshing that out so you can understand these people aren't afraid to throw down their lives because it's only the life of their body. And as a Kshatriya, if you start valuing your body, you are not a Kshatriya and you should go do some other thing,
You
That
put
was
this so
wonderful,
beautifully.
Sai.
I have tingles.
That was very beautiful. Marie, you raising your hand?
Yes, I am. I was thinking about what Gangalila was saying, and I think the thing is not so much that we don't have duty, but that our duties are less rigidly defined by society. So part of the
Well said.
part of the exploration of living this life is to discover one's duty and learn how to act upon it. That we have these natural impulses toward mission, toward connection, hopefully toward God, though not everybody is able to get to the point where they can describe the divine as divine. But that all of our lives is movement to try to uncover that which in my tradition would be called the image of God in us and find how to express it in the world. So I don't know. I just thought that might help. That's like kind of how my tradition, which is like entirely in Kali Yuga, like even the old part, it's like, like the Jewish tradition even only goes back 5,000 years or so. So that's like really recent. And so like, that's where we're used to seeing it. And it's not, you were born into this or you were raised in this. It's everybody's got to figure this out on their own because the world is nuts. And so I don't know if that helps, but that's what has helped me. along these lines. Does that make sense?
That was beautiful, Marie. I'm not sure if I grasped everything that you said, but what I was thinking of, what I think you were also saying is that, but you articulated it so much better. You and Jayadev were so articulate. Like, there's this like social expression of duty and this whole structure, right, in the Vedic society. But we, in our own lives, we're extracting those principles. We may be applying them in different ways. Is that related to what you were saying, Marie? She's nodding her head. Okay. But she's saying something. You muted yourself. We can't hear you.
I thought I had unmuted. Anyway, okay. Yeah. I mean, part of it is it's a little scattered because I was actually in the middle of reading a book on, it's called Glad-Hearted Disciples. It's on Christian education and missional relationships. And so like I had a whole bunch of vocabulary in my brain that I was having trouble contextualizing. But I think what you were saying, yeah, I think we've been saying the same thing from several angles. Mm-hmm. So I hope somewhere in there can be a triangulation that's helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I for one am definitely going to go back and listen to all of this again. And going back to some of the points that Jayadev was raising, our Gurudev, yeah, he didn't expect us to live up to this type of Vedic standard of Dharma. And there were comments that he made, how, and sometimes in a joking way, how the Westerners, he would say they're more qualified for Raga Marg, the spontaneous type of devotion, because we can't really follow Vidhi Marg, the regulated type of devotion. He would make comments like that, kind of jokingly sometimes, but there's also some truth there. He would also say it with, some, with truth, as something that is true, that, there's a line, right? Because it can actually be an obstacle, being too rigid about following this whole type of structure. It can actually be a hindrance on the path of bhakti, and that's something our Gurudev would talk about. Like for example, he would say how the Westerners don't have attachment to family. Whereas in the Vedic culture, there's so much importance put on the family. The family are worshipable, and that's beautiful, of course, but it can become a hindrance. It can become that the attachment and the importance put on family that overrides your spiritual practice and your spiritual culture. So that was one thing our Gurudev mentioned. Like the Westerners, they don't have any attachment to family, and they'll just dive into Krishna consciousness without considering family opinions, family ties, family obligations that may be opposing their spiritual practice. And finally, just going back to what me and Marie were kind of going back and forth on, at the same time, Bhagavad Gita, we have to remember, it can be read and applied on different levels. And there are many statements of Krishna, he's like speaking, like on one level, he's speaking about the immediate situation on the battle, but on another level, he's speaking about spiritual principles that can be applied in a more broad way in our spiritual practice. So some of these principles of duty, it may not be that we're applying them like in our day-to-day, social lives, but in terms of our adherence to spiritual principles, then we're applying them there. Like we're going a little late now, so I don't know if maybe we'll pause there. For example, Krishna says, like, in victory or defeat, actually, you're always victorious. If you're always acting according to your duty, you're always victorious. And as Jaya Bhakti mentioned, the if you die in this battle, then you'll go to heaven. You'll get an upgrade. And if you live, and then you'll win, and then you'll enjoy the rewards of having been the victor. So it's a win-win situation, right? So apparently Krishna is speaking about this particular situation, but we can also apply that to our own endeavors in spiritual life and service offerings that we're trying to make. That apparently it may be a failure, but if we're situated in the right consciousness, we're always successful from a higher consideration. So we can apply these things in more subtle ways. That's what I'm saying. But I've been talking too much. We're going over
This was
time.
really good because I always thought that that's what I need to get myself to do, to realize, like, I'm not a man. I'm not well trained with all my weapons. I'm not in my armor on a battlefield having to attack my cousins and having my cousins about to kill me, and I have to be willing to kill them. But I always thought that that was metaphorical for the internal battle happening in my mind, in what is partially demonic, under Kali influence, and the part of my mind which is pure and is thriving to be devotional. And so that's what I would like to think of my internal battlefield. And that's why I was thinking, oh, it's the surveillance of the battlefield. It's like I need to kind of know where the pull is in my internal understanding. So what I always invited myself to go about in this angle. So now I'm not so sure if I need to continue my imagination to really just be external and really think of a battlefield, think with all these energies. I want to be understanding, like, do I need to just be Arjuna myself? If I am going on, do I need to become Arjuna basically to really understand the advice? Is that what I need to do? Like, when you watch a movie, you kind of, what's that called? You're identifying with the role, no matter, even if I'm not like that at all. But I'm wondering if that is a good way for me to continue. How am I going to study the Bhagavad Gita? Should I put myself and my own life, my own battlefield kind of over there so I can be fully immersed in another battle?
I think I appreciate your comments. But I do think there's such a thing as trying too hard.
Oh, okay.
And I think let's hear, and see where things touch us.
Okay.
And see where they're relevant, and see how, like, as our daily lives are playing out, like, we'll remember different things and we'll be guided and inspired in different ways. I think that's a safer approach. But definitely it's true, our Srila Sridhar Maharaj mentions that the real battlefield is within. On one level, it can be read in that metaphorical way. Both sides are there. But we don't need to, try too hard with that. But yeah.
Well, thanks for your guidance, and thank you, everyone. And so happy this is happening. And Hare Krishna. And
thank you, Gangalila, so much for bringing up those really, deep and pertinent points. That was wonderful. We also have Hari Vallabha Prabhu here. Prabhu, do you want to add anything to our discussion?
No, I think I came kind of late. I don't know.
Okay. We've been going down some intricate pathways.
The only thing I would say is that when she said, how much you can identify with Arjun, you don't want to psych yourself out. I mean, that's what I was getting from what you said. That's the only thing, if that's appropriate. Like, yeah, it's more like, we're in the spirit of this, we're worshiping a higher ideal. And of course, we fall very short of that high ideal. So, we don't want to feel defeated unnecessarily or prematurely by trying to imbibe that higher ideal too soon. More we're hearing that ideal and worshiping it, and some inspiration naturally will come to us in the heart, and then we have to take that to heart and do our best and just try. That's all I was thinking.
That was great. Thank you, Hari.
That was
Right. Hare
really
Krishna.
nicely articulated.
Hardy Bol.
Yeah, that was
Right.
Wonderful.
Okay, well, Jai Srimad-Bhagavata Gita ki Jai, Srila Bhakti
Jai.
Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai,
Jai.
Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Jai, all the assembled devotees, sincere
Jai.
seekers ki Jai, Shri
Jai.
Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai, Jai
Jai.
Gaur. Thank you all so much for joining, and we look
Jai. Thank
Rani.
you.
Jai.